Do you have a tween daughter between the ages of 8 and 12, and you're worried about how you're going to guide her through this critical stage in her life with respect to her hormones and her mental resilience, building a healthy body image? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Wild Wisdom Show. I'm Dr. Patricia Mills, a holistic medical doctor with a root cause approach to health. And today we're going to be talking about such an important topic, which is how to empower your tween daughter to boost her hormone health and build mental resilience. And I am not alone today. I am adding my expertise to that of Tara Rawana. She has a doctorate in naturopathic medicine. She's a holistic nutritionist, and she holds a certificate in cognitive behavioral therapy. And not just that, Tara co-founded an organization, a company called All About Mental Empowerment. And this company provides mental health education in schools. So it's been accepted into school curriculums, which I can tell you is a very hard thing to do. And as a result, she has worked with, I think, over 50 schools, which has resulted in touch points with over 22,000 students, as well as their parents and teachers. Tara, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Oh, likewise. And this topic of empowering our tween daughters is so close to my heart because while I don't have a daughter, I was a tween at one point in time. And what you're offering, we're going to be talking about what it is, like this knowledge and these insights from working with these adolescents and working with tweens, female tweens, specifically on their hormones, mental resilience, gut health, body image, all of those things. Like you've had, real experience creating programs and delivering them with their girls and their mothers present as well. And I'm having you join me today because I want to know, first of all, I wish I had had access to this information when I was a tween, right?
Mhm. Yes.
And I'm pretty sure my mom would have had loved to have us, support in this area as well. And I know many people in my life who are, either have tween daughters. I have, nieces in that tween life stage. And I just want to make sure that every woman, and every daughter who wants this information has access to it. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm so excited to dive into all things tween health.
Yeah. And to kind of give the context, the way that we got to know each other is that we are part of this collective of, naturopathic, functional medicine doctors, essentially health professionals who are servicing women in terms of like the healthcare space, both in health promotion and treatment. And in particular, creating and delivering and offering programs in health promotion. And it's called the Wild Collective. And initially, we only had this for women, not teenagers, like adults. But
Mhm.
the Wild Collective, you have just recently collaborated with the Wild Collective to create a health promotion program, 6 modules, 6 topics, and we'll talk about each topic because it has been purposely designed to cover things in a way that it's a holistic approach to that mind, body, that whole mind body connection really that we're lacking. So talking about the mind, talking about the body and how they interact. And you have this unique skill set that you lent to the creation of this 6 module program, and you've run it now a few times, so you have like lived experience of it. And I want to know, and I'm sure many of our audience want to know, what are your insights for working with these twin daughters and their mothers in terms of how you support them and provide the education and the content, and what is that content? Like, what do our tween daughters need to know these days in order
Mhm.
to build, and boost their healthy hormones and build mental resilience?
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited to dive into all these things. So I feel like in working in schools and having this company, I get to see a lot of the behind the scenes. I see a lot of what's being taught in schools when it comes to mental health. And my company fills a lot of those gaps. And what I really love about the Empowered Tween program is that we're filling so many different gaps. We've had some school boards, unfortunately, ask us to not talk about things like body image when we're talking about mental health, which I can understand from their perspective, it's a very layered topic, but it's essential that we're having these conversations with our girls, right? This is an area that so many women struggle with, and we need to be having these conversations. So I'm really grateful that I've created this space and that we're collaborating to offer this community for your community to really start to have these essential conversations. So I can speak to what, the modules that are part of this program. And even just when I was putting it together, they're really, in the hustle and bustle of daily life, how often are we sitting down with our girls and talking about periods, right? How often are we sitting down talking about puberty before we have to be having these conversations because girls are really, when they're in the thick of it. So really what this program does is it creates the foundation to have these essential conversations. So we're talking about periods before most girls have had their periods. We're looking at tampons and pads. We're talking about diva cups and, period underwear. And we're having these conversations so that girls feel really empowered to take care of their bodies and take care of their health in these important ways. So that's the first module. It's all about periods. So we go through even just what a period is, right? And, I ask the girls in this module when we get started how they feel about getting their first period. And a lot of them say, oh, I feel nervous. I feel icky about it. And it's just great to be able to talk about it and talk about what are the phases of the cycle. And, your energy is going to change throughout your menstrual cycle, and that's okay. And, by the end of that module, when I ask the girls again, how do you feel about your periods now? So many of them say, I feel more confident. I feel like I understand it better. I feel like I can talk to my mom about this. Before, I felt a little bit uncomfortable going to her maybe with questions or concerns that I had. So that's how we start off the program, with that really powerful conversation about periods.
Okay, I just got goosebumps because first of all, and I think a lot of women will relate to this, is that I did not learn about the phases of my menstrual cycle
Mhm.
until I was in my 30s.
Right. Yeah.
And it was not in medical school, right? So,
Mhm.
it was through other sources, and I didn't understand how, like, it can be, like, you can the way you view things, your perspective of things is what dictates your life experience, and you can either view the cycles of your period in a very negative way, like, "Oh, no, I've got my luteal phase coming, I've got my I'm gonna menstruate, and I feel really terrible during that time," or whatever. But if someone with experience, someone's with knowledge, someone with that confidence and that just that ability to communicate and connect with people in a way that I personally probably would not be able to do if I had a daughter. So it's like kind of like, it takes a community to raise a child, right?
Absolutely.
So having that conversation with other peers so that you don't feel alone, so other
Mhm.
girls in the group learning at the same time, having it communicated in a specific way so that by the end of it, you're actually not afraid of your period, and you understand that there are ebbs and flows, and that can be quite natural, right?
Mhm.
And how to ride that wave so that it doesn't feel like, oh, like a negative thing. It can actually feel like, I think in certain cultures, they even say that that phase, that premenstrual phase, is like our most powerful, like our deepest, most powerful time. And it's the time for introspection and taking
Mhm.
time for ourselves. And if someone were to have taught it to me that way, I probably would have had a really different experience with my like my life up until this point, up until the point of having learned that.
Yeah.
So first, I just want to say that, and secondly, I got my period all of a sudden without having been told anything about it. I was sitting in class, and it was like in Brazil, and we had uniforms, and I was wearing a white uniform. That was our uniform. And all of a sudden, I had blood all over the bottom of my pants, and my uniform was white. And I remember
Mm.
I sat up to go to the bathroom, and someone was like, one of my, kids in the class was like, "Oh my God, you're bleeding." So I took like a sweater and tied it around my waist, and I ran out and I called my mom. I had no idea. I didn't know it was my period.
Mhm.
I hadn't been prepared for it at all. So
Mhm.
I was like in this state of like, oh my God, that's like, this is, there's something's wrong with my body. And then I was taught about it, but the way I was taught about it was, here's your tampon, right? Or here's your pad, because I couldn't use a tampon at the time. Put it on, change it this much, clean yourself more often, and now welcome to having a period. Like, that's it.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
I don't blame my mother or, my aunts and people who were around me at the time, because that's how they had been taught.
Yeah.
Right. But I think this is the time.
Yeah.
This is the time for a different kind of conversation, a more
Mhm.
empowered conversation. So I want to just, first of all, thank you
Mm.
for creating like I think it's 2 hours, right, that you spend talking
Mhm.
to these mothers and daughters. So the moms are with the daughters at the same time,
Yeah.
having these conversations together. So just thank you. That's amazing to me.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. And, I think, when I reflect on this too, I really think the way that we approach our daughter's first period really sets the stage for all of the conversations about puberty going forward, right? So if we're able to frame it in this way that, hey, this is actually a beautiful thing, this is a positive thing, let's dive deeper together, let's be more connected as we move through this journey for you, that opens up the floor to have so many empowering conversations as other changes happen in her body, as she progresses through her teenage years, if we set that foundation early on that she can come to you with anything that she's going through, even if it feels icky, even if it feels a little uncomfortable, if you let her know that you're a safe place in that way to go through all of these changes, I think that really sets up that relationship for so, so much success.
Wow.
And another thing I wanted to share too, actually, so we had a mom, and so I've been running the program for over a year now, and a mom that was part of our first cohort, she recently reached out and let me know that her daughter just recently got her first period. And her mom actually, she wasn't home at the time. And when she got home, her daughter told her, hey, mom, I got my period and I knew exactly what to do. I went to my period kit that we put together, that we talked about. I took out the things that I wanted to use. I made myself a care pack for school tomorrow. And when the mom sent this message, she's like, I can't stop crying. I'm so grateful that we were able to sit in that circle together and have these conversations. Like, I didn't even have to be there. And she knew exactly what to do. She felt so empowered. And that just, like, I'm getting emotional talking about it. It's just
Crying,
so,
and I don't think I've ever cried on this show before, on the podcast. Like, that is so beautiful.
so
That's
beautiful.
so nice.
Yeah.
I
And I
wish this
just,
for every girl.
me too. Me too. It's so powerful, right? Like to have that experience. I remember when I got my first period too, I was like, wait, what is this? And I felt some shame, I think. And I don't even know why I felt shame about it, but it took me a few days to tell my mom. I felt kind of scared to tell her. It was I think I just wish every girl had that experience of, hey, I got my period. I'm excited about it. I know what to do. I know what all the next steps are. It's just such an empowering way to start puberty, really. It's so beautiful.
It really does set the stage for everything else. Like, what a massive difference.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure. So module 2, I can dive into that as well. So module 2 is all about digestion. So in this module, I educate girls about their digestive organs, how that all works. We have a really fun conversation about our gut bacteria, what that's doing, and how we can keep that healthy. And then we really transition the conversation to start to talk about our relationship with food. So we dive into that. And I think this is a really, really important conversation. In a lot of the work that I do in schools, especially in high schools, we're talking about these things. We're talking about, disordered eating. And it's a lot of schools, the ones that the boards say that we can dive into these topics, they really need resources on this. They're seeing so many teens suffering with eating disorders. And there's a big gap when it comes to education in this area. So we dive into that. We talk about what that looks like. We talk about how we can start to cultivate a positive relationship with food. And I even tell the girls I struggled with disordered eating myself. I became plant-based really early on in life, and that turned into some orthorexia for me and an obsession with having to eat perfectly clean and healthy and organic all the time. And it wreaked havoc on my life for a long time. It messed with my hormones, brain fog, and a lot of anxiety around food. And so we have just a really empowering conversation about that and how we can start to develop a healthy relationship with food, which again, I just think is so essential. And when we bring that back to body image, right? There's so many young girls who, whether it's through social media, media in general, comments from peers, a lot of girls are struggling with their body image. And so having empowering conversations about this early on is, I think, so, so crucial.
Yeah, and it's interesting that some of the schools are afraid to talk about body image or don't want to talk about it. And the thing is, not talking about it doesn't make the problem go away.
Exactly.
Historically, it makes it worse.
Yes.
And it takes courage, and you have to be brave, and sometimes
Mhm.
you will make mistakes.
Yeah.
However, I think the conversation needs to be had, and when the conversation is developed and led by someone with experience. And so I find it interesting because it is a very tricky subject, especially with young girls, where you want to teach them how to eat healthy and support their hormone health and their body health and support their brain health, because that does depend
Mhm.
on nutrition. And you don't want to create this disordered eating. You don't want to be the source of disordered eating. So, as a mother, you either want to empower yourself by learning how to have those discussions, or lean on, again, on your community, someone like Tara, who can have those discussions with you and your daughter and guide them, because it is such a prevalent issue in today's society that, again, if you ignore that it's an issue, it may end up landing on your doorstep in the form of your daughter developing a disordered eating, right? And I think many of us have had some form of disordered eating at some point in time in our lives. And again, having that conversation early in a very open way, right, could create a lot of lasting positive change, which is so, again, empowering. Not to overuse that word, but that it's so applicable here.
Yeah, it's my favorite word. I use it all the time. And even when we look to the research shows that in 13-year-old girls, over 50% of them actually have negative feelings about their body.
Mm.
So, sometimes we think that these conversations don't need to be happening until the teenage years, until our kids are on social media. But, if by 13, over 50% of girls are unhappy with their bodies, we need to be having these conversations at 9 years old, at 10 years old, right? We have to make space for this. We have to dive into these things because, another thing that I think about too, they're getting this information regardless, right? And if we can have some control over who the source of this information is, that will create a lot of, positive change moving forward. And even too, sitting in the circle and having conversations about this, a lot of moms, right? Like thinking about the generation that a lot of us grew up in, there was just a lot of pressure to look a certain way, to have a certain body type. And I think a lot of moms are still struggling with that as well and have difficulties having conversations around nutrition in a way that isn't shaming of how much their daughter's eating or, of the way that she looks. It is a delicate balance. And you're right when we talk about, you know, protein and fats and things that create the foundation for healthy hormones. It's a very nuanced conversation to be had about nutrition and body image and all of the things that go into that. So I think having this conversation in a circle, in a group, and hearing what the girls say, hearing their insights and reminding the moms, the way that you talk about your body, the way that you look at your body in the mirror, she sees that. I remember again, back in the first cohort, I mentioned that. And there was a girl, she was the youngest girl we've had in the program. Her mom was just very, very keen to have them join. And she had just turned 7. And I said to the moms, your daughter's paying attention. And the way, if you look in the mirror and you're pinching parts of your body or saying negative things about your body, she's noticing that. And that makes a difference. And I remember that one young 7-year-old girl, she was like, yeah, that's true. They notice all these things, right? And they're paying attention. So it's so important that we're having these conversations early on.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I love that you're a holistic nutritionist
Mhm.
with that doctorate in naturopathic medicine and the mental health program curriculum. So it's such a beautiful blend. So I'm super curious to get some more of your insights. I want to continue to cover the topics. And when for the viewer or the listener, when you hear module, you can also think of like topic I need to make sure my daughter knows about by the age of like, early on, at least between the ages of 8 and 12.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't think we've mentioned this, but the program that Tara is offering is called Empowered Tween. And
Mhm.
so these are the 6 modules or 6 topics that, as a result of her background in nutrition and naturopathic medicine and mental health programs in school curriculums, she felt, she felt needed to be included in the conversation. So we've talked about periods and menstrual cycles and empowerment around what to do and when to do and how to approach that in a positive way. Now we've talked about gut health, the gut microbiome, nutrition, and a healthy relationship with food and body image, which is so
Mhm.
beautiful. So what's that next topic that women need to be talking about, or at least having their daughters exposed to it in a safe and healthy way?
Yeah, so the next module is actually mental health. So in this module, we really dive into feelings, and really a big focus actually of this module is helping girls create coping strategies for all of the difficult feelings that they feel. And, even just having a conversation about what mental health is, right? And, a lot of girls, they know we have to take care of our physical bodies. And if we break our arm, we go to the doctor, we do the things to heal the arm, and it gets better. And so, even relating that to the conversation about mental health, sometimes we go through a hard thing and we need the cast or we need the band-aid in order to help us move through that and process the feelings that we're having and cope with the difficulties that we all experience in life. So, of course, I love this topic. I have a whole business around mental health. So it's such a fun module, really helping girls identify the feelings that they're feeling and then talking about, okay, maybe you do feel frustrated often. How do you currently cope with frustration when you feel it? And then, sometimes they say, well, I yell at my brother when he's annoying me and making me frustrated. And then we can have a conversation about, okay, what coping strategies do we want to put in place instead? And how can we do that? Where can we take a breath? Where can we, just take some time, create some space in order to show up and react the way that feels really good to us? So yeah, it's a really fun module, and we always have such great conversations. And I think too, some other things that we talk about. Sometimes we have moms share some struggles that they've had with their mental health as we go through this module. And I think that's actually a really beautiful and important part of this program is having the moms share, what's been challenging for them in a safe space and having their daughters hear some of those challenges that they've been through. I think that it creates a whole other layer of empathy, right? When we see our mom, see this person in our life that we're so close and connected to, share her challenges and be vulnerable in that way, I think it just normalizes so much. And I think to the girls, it shows them that they can have these conversations with their mom. They can bring these challenging topics to light because their mom has been there and has seen those things and has walked, some of the same path. So I think that vulnerability is so important. And that's a big part of our mental health discussion as well.
And are there any tips for moms where, there's excess in everything, and there can be
Mhm.
excess in sharing, and there can be, some people may feel inclined to overshare or, share in a way that overwhelms. Are there any, have you seen or witnessed, or do you have any strategies for that for a mother who's listening to this or watching this?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And so often, what I say is to let your daughter lead the conversation. So when it comes to having these conversations about mental health, I think if she's struggling to identify her feelings, then kind of sharing how you might feel in that situation and kind of using that as a way to connect with her. So outside of the program, that's always a tip that I give is sometimes it is important to lead with that vulnerability and let her know, if I was in that situation, I might feel like this, and this is how I might cope with this. And then when we're in the circle in the program having these conversations, I prompt the discussion. So often the question that I pose there is we talk about, it's common to either get stuck in the past where we, go through and think about the things that we did before and what we should have said instead, or to get stuck in the future where we're thinking about all the things that are to come and maybe worrying about certain outcomes. And so I kind of phrase it like that. And then I ask everyone, so moms and girls, to share if they find that they get stuck more in the future or get stuck more in the past with an example if they have it. So in the circle, it's controlled vulnerability, I like to say. So safe and controlled vulnerability, because you're right, there can absolutely be oversharing and sometimes things that daughters, maybe they're not at an age where it's appropriate to dive into certain things. So I think that's an important thing to bring up and discuss as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then what would you say would be the next important topic of conversation that you included in your next module?
So in the next module, we dive into puberty as a whole. So in that first session, we talk about periods, but then in module 4, we really dive into all other aspects of puberty. So, we talk about the stages, you can expect the first thing, when it comes to puberty that you might notice is those breast buds. And then, about 6 months to a year before your daughter gets her period, she might notice some vaginal discharge. And so we have a conversation about that. I mean, I remember when I was young and I first started to notice some discharge in my underwear, I had no idea what was going on. And I thought, this is for sure just me. And there's something wrong with my body because who's talking about that, right?
Yeah.
And so we dive into all those things and we talk about that. We talk about pubic hair. We talk about all of those things. We talk about sources of shame around our body, whether that's odors that are increased during puberty and how we want to handle those things and just starting more conversations about that. We talk about, the changes in the brain that occur. And something that I love to talk about too is when your daughter is going through adolescence, her brain is changing so, so much. Actually, besides in utero, this is the time that the brain is developing the most. And so there's so much reorganization that's happening in the brain. There's the development of all these different areas. The amygdala is most sensitive. And so we talk about all those things. And I think a lot of moms have, kind of a general awareness of this. But I think when we're able to have a conversation about the research, about what's really happening, it can just create a little bit more, what's the right word? A little bit more ease in that relationship. Because I think when your daughter is going through massive hormonal changes, as a parent, that can be really challenging to cope with and to parent through. And so having these conversations about all the changes, mental, but also physical, is really important.
Yeah, and it sounds like it demystifies
Mhm.
like an experience that can otherwise feel very chaotic. And, whenever we understand something better, we feel like we're more in control, right? Like
Mhm.
we're more capable of responding appropriately. And even just those feelings will be more settled. So I can definitely see that. And, it's funny. I don't actually think that many of us know the changes that happen in the brain during puberty. And
Mhm.
so either we need to educate ourselves around it and understand how the importance of that in the context of what our daughters are going through, or again, like get other people to help out so that we can
Mhm.
have those discussions. And that way the conversation, it goes from, oh, I'm feeling slightly uncomfortable. And as you're going through puberty, I feel like we're talking less and less and connecting less and less, to one of, wow, like I feel even more connected to you and we've got this. Like we've got this
Yeah,
together. So beautiful.
absolutely. Yeah. And even, when I was putting this content together, I really had two big goals in mind. So, number one was, of course, Tween Health curriculum. How can I distill this important conversations about tween bodies and mental health and all of these changes in a way that would appeal to this age group? So, using all my experience working in schools, it's we take so many little breaks to do charades, we do a lot of coloring activities, we do group sharing. So that was the first priority. And then the second priority was really, how can I help to increase closeness and connection between moms and daughters? So that intimacy piece was so important to me as I was creating this content. And it's really baked into every single module that we go through. There's so much opportunity to share and to connect. And actually, something that one mom who was part of a more recent cohort, she shared was that her favorite part of every module was the drive home, because they would sit in the car together and just have the opportunity to share all the things that came up in the session, all the things that they wanted to dive a little bit deeper in. Maybe the girl would ask her mom a couple questions that came up after going through this content. And that was just a really meaningful piece of feedback for me. That's something that is really important when I was creating all of this content.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And you've had experience delivering it in person, and we're also offering this online so that other people can join from other places in the world other than where you live, which is in Burlington, Ontario, right? In Canada.
Yeah.
But I live in British Columbia, and I wanted my community that is global to have access to what you're doing. So we're doing it online, which is wonderful. And
Mhm.
then moving to the next important topic of conversation or module, what would that be?
Yeah, so module 5 is called My Vision. And I love this module. I love all the modules, but this one is really, really fun because we create vision boards. And the way that I start the conversation in this module is we have a conversation about values. And I think that it is so important to talk to tween girls about their values. And even when I think about it for myself, the first time I really thought about my values was when I was doing my doctorate. Somebody asked about it. It was like part of something that we were doing, and that came up. And it was the first time that I actually sat down and thought about, how would I define what my values are? What is truly important to me? And I think when we're able to have these conversations again at 9, 10, 11 years old, when girls can identify those values, it really creates a solid foundation to help them make difficult decisions as they move through their lives. And it's so beautiful to have all these young girls in a circle saying, my values are family and trust and respect. And it's just such a beautiful thing to help them create that foundation so early on in life. And what we do when we establish those values is I actually encourage them to include that on their vision board. So to visually create a visual representation of their values, along with all the things that they want to call into their life over the next year. And something else that we do with the vision boards that I just love is I always encourage the girls, when they're creating their vision board, have half of the vision board be the things that are important to you and the things that you want to call in or cultivate over the next year. And then the other half of the vision board, create a visual representation of that relationship that you want with your mom. So some words to describe that relationship, maybe some of the fun things you want to do together. And again, that's just another way that we create more intimacy in that relationship. So it's such a fun module, like vision boards, such a fun creative activity. The girls always absolutely love doing this. So yeah, it's such a fun module.
That's amazing. And there's so much neuroscience around the idea of vision boards, like, fortifying those neural networks of those values, like speaking it out loud allows you to embody it easier. And I feel like I would have had a much different relationship with my mom now if I had had that in the past. Not to say I love my mom and I have a most amazing relationship with her. And it would probably be like even more up level. Maybe I should do a vision board with her.
Yeah, I love it. It's so fun.
Never too late.
Never too late.
Never too late. Thank you for that. And so what would be the next topic, the last module of Empowered Tween, or the last topic that women ideally would be having with their daughters at some point in time in their tween years?
So the last module, we really center the conversation on perfectionism.
Mm.
And I think it's so, so important that we're talking about this. And I think that, generally society creates a lot of standards for women about the way that you should show up in the world, and that excellence is expected. And so we have a conversation about perfectionism. We have a conversation about failure and getting really comfortable with failure. And even just reminding the girls, every time that you step outside your comfort zone, every time that you set a big goal for yourself and try to achieve that, there's a chance you're going to fail. And that's okay. And that's actually part of learning. That's part of growing. And I think that's a really, really important conversation. In working with so many schools, something that I hear from principals constantly is levels of anxiety are at an all-time high, especially coming out of the pandemic. We see a lot of kids who really, really struggled during those years. And, when we look at the world was very chaotic during that time, and kids feel all that, right? They're little sponges, and they soak all of that up. And that was a time in the world where you weren't taking a lot of chances and you weren't stepping outside of your comfort zone because there was a lot going on. But, as we transition into this back to, normal, back to our routines, it's important that we're making sure that we're having these conversations and that we're encouraging kids to step outside their comfort zone, that we're letting them know you don't have to be perfect. It's okay to fail at things. It's okay to make mistakes. One mom recently in our Empowered Tween Circle, she shared that they have, what did she call them? Failure parties or mistake parties at home when their kids, she has 3 kids, when any of them go through something hard and fail at something. And, just letting kids know that you're going to love them through the failure and that you don't expect perfection. And it's such an important conversation. So we talk a lot about that in this final module. And then we go through and we do a big recap of everything, of all the other modules, everything that we talked about. And then just really help girls kind of bring it all together and figure out how they're going to start applying these things into their life. So yeah, it's a really big module, just pulling all the concepts together and putting a big bow on the program.
You surprised me when you said perfectionism, because it hit me a little bit in the solar plexus there. Oh, this is what this program was designed for me.
Me too.
Yeah. And yeah, there is that. And I love everything you said about that. And it's something that we all need to listen to, right? Like there's different kinds of people out there. And for some people, perfectionism is not an issue, but I would say for most of us, it is. And it's better to be prepared to deal with it and to handle it in a healthy way so that you can still achieve and get everything you want out of life, but not do it at a cost for your mental health or your physical health or emotional, spiritual health, right? Again, it's like, it's the balance. And in our society, we tend to be extreme, like one way or the other. And it's like, no, there's a middle way, right? There's a way to hold it, to have perfectionism and relaxation and self-care and self-acceptance and forgiveness and, all those things all together.
Yeah.
Versus just the perfectionism, which is just such a burnout. It just sets girls and women up for burnout. And that's what we're seeing today. We are seeing what we witness today in women like in my age group, in my 40s, for example, and beyond, is the consequences of not having had these conversations or learned this information early on. And some of us are learning it now. So by the way, everything you've talked about, all those topics are important for any person with ovaries.
Yes.
Probably for the men as well in the audience. We're speaking mostly about women here at this point in time, but there's a lot of things there that, about body image and things that boys are also going through. And I was curious, would you mind just taking this opportunity to share a few insights that you've had as a result, like during the delivering of these programs, and also some of the outcomes? Like, it sounds like you remain in touch sometimes with some of the women reach out to you to give you some feedback on how that program has, changed things for them. What are some of the insights and observations that you've had?
Yeah. I think a big one in running this program now a few times, some of the big ones. So I think one thing that I've really realized is that one of the most beautiful, important parts of this program is giving moms the language to have these conversations, right? And I think that, in every session, the moms are there with their daughters, and the girls are listening to this content, and the education is geared to their age group. But it's really a roadmap for the moms. It's teaching the moms how to dive into these topics, how to approach these things in an age appropriate manner to further these conversations. And so that's a lot of the feedback that we get. And, even a lot of moms, they say, I didn't know this. Like, when we talk about the menstrual cycle, the different phases, a lot of the moms are just shocked. They say, oh, I wish I had known this years ago. I wish I had this knowledge about the way that my body works. So that's been one really big takeaway. And then the mom that I shared about, who reached out about her daughter getting her first period and what a beautiful experience that was. That was really such a beautiful, just a beautiful message, and really just, I guess, yeah, just really showed that we're doing something really important here, and that having these conversations, equipping these girls with this knowledge is just so, so important. And, another thing, just as I'm thinking about all of the feedback from moms, there was some of the things in the mental health lecture. So I'm thinking about one of the exercises that we go through is we talk about the circle of control. And so there's a circle that we have in the middle of the slide, and it's all the things that you can control. And then outside of that, all of the things that you have no control over. And we have a conversation about that. And, so often girls, but also adults, we find ourselves worried about a lot of the things that are outside of that circle, things that at the end of the day, we really have no control over. And I remember one of the moms, she was like, at the end, she said, that really changed the way that I think about my mental health and the way that I think about, what I have control over. And, I think that that's really been one of the big takeaways. It's giving the girls this information, but it's also helping the moms heal certain parts of themselves. And not that they came in broken in any way, but we a lot of us did grow up in a society that was flawed. And I think in a lot of ways, society is still flawed, but we, inherited a lot of faulty beliefs about ourselves and about the world. And so having these conversations and seeing those shifts in the moms and knowing the ripple effects of having these aha moments and of thinking about control and mental health and menstrual cycle and, hormones and all of these things, those aha moments and shifts for them are going to have such a huge impact on her daughter, on her kids, on her community. And I think that when I was creating this content and putting this together, I didn't really realize how much it was going to benefit the moms. And that's been a really just beautiful takeaway for me, I think.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And, it's interesting because I think we need to give society kind of the same forgiveness that we give ourselves for lack of perfection. And the truth is, our society will never be perfect because nothing is perfect. We are failing towards evolution, always, in some areas we improve, some areas we get setbacks, but overall it seems to be, in the grand scheme of things, moving in the right direction. And so that's a very big bird-eyed view that we are overall moving in the right direction. However, in this moment, at this time, in your current life and your relationship with your daughter, if you're listening or viewing this, if you have someone in your life who has a tween daughter or someone between the ages of 8 or 12, there are things that need to be done if the outcome that you want is an empowered woman, right? And so we're kind of aiming for the future here. And what I would love to have happen, what I would love to be the result of this wonderful collaboration between a naturopathic doctor, a mental health provider, a holistic nutritionist, right? Like, I mean, just so many things, that the lived experience of working with women, mothers and daughters, is that for those who want it, that it's available. This support and this knowledge and this information is available. And that's what we're working towards here. So what I want to say now is that if you've listened to this and you're like, please, I just want to learn more about how to work with Tara and her group program, if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the show notes. If you're listening to the podcast, go to YouTube. It'll be in the show notes. I'm going to put the link for the registration page. Right now, today is April 4th, and we are starting a program. Tara's going to be starting her next online program mid-April. And it's going to run until the end of June. It's every second week on a Sunday online for a couple hours for mothers and daughters. And if you're interested, you can register for that now. If you're watching this not in time, you can put your name on the wait list. I'll see if I can also get the wait list to take where you live, because if you happen to live in a place that will offer it locally, then they can reach out to you when one is running live. Otherwise, we can reach out to you when there's an online option. And that way, at least within a year's period, you would have the opportunity, you'll be contacted when one becomes available, and you have the opportunity to engage with your daughter. And even if you're a little bit out of that age range, if you still think it's appropriate, just let us know, email us, email Tara, have a conversation and just see what works for you. I hope you found this as empowering conversation, even if you don't have a daughter and you're a woman listening to this, and how this has resonated, how, we as women, we are having a revolution, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed, but as women, we are having a revolution at every stage of the game. We're having a revolution for tweens, for teenagers, for young adolescents, for women going through perimenopause, in menopause. There's so much happening right now. It fills me with such hope and excitement. Sometimes I feel frustrated with when I hear about women being denied therapy or being misunderstood when they present to their doctors with signs that are perimenopause or hormone imbalance. And I know that this will change. This will change over time, and it may take time. But let's just make this so much easier for our daughters so that they don't have to go through the struggle that we're going through. And they can be like part of the revolution, but have the solutions at their fingertips. And this is really what we're offering here. So thank you so much, Tara. Is there anything else that you would like to add for our viewers or listeners today?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I don't think that I have anything else to add, but if anyone does have any questions or any questions at all for me, feel free to reach out. I'm happy. I love talking about this. I absolutely love what I do. I feel so grateful to be able to provide this. I think, it's what you said, like, it is a revolution. And I think the earlier that we can have these conversations about health, the more that we can just be educated about our own bodies, the better that we can actually advocate for ourselves in our doctor's offices and have really high-level conversations about our own bodies. I think the better off we all are. So I absolutely love this program. I think that we're doing something really important here. And I thank you for bringing me on board and creating this partnership together. I'm really excited to offer this to your community.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I'll also put in the show notes on YouTube how to reach you. You have an Instagram account, right? What are your social media platforms, if you can just share that with the audience?
Sure. Yeah. So you can reach me on Instagram. I'm at Tara Rawana Wellness on Instagram. So you can send me a message there, and I'm always happy to chat.
That's TaraRawana Wellness.
That's right.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for joining me today. Tara. And thank you, the viewer listener, for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, or night, depending on when you catch this. And remember, please share this. Sharing is caring. And if you enjoyed this, also subscribe so you don't miss any future wild wisdom. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.